Hey there, how are we going? I have a question. Do you ever get tired of European folklore and fantasy? I definitely do. Which is why I was really intrigued when I saw this game. This is Capharnaüm from Mindjammer Games. At least I think it's pronounced Capharnaüm. It's an originally French game that has been translated into English. So, without further ado, let's get stuck into this one. Capharnaüm is a fantasy world that is loosely based on Middle Eastern folklore, history, with a little bit of Greco-Roman influence tossed in there. Every so often, as I describe the setting, I'll reference a real-world setting that this place seems to resemble just a little. This is a very lore-dense book, so I'll try keep things really short and just give the cliff notes. There are several racial and ethnic groups that are included in this game, and with every single one, you at least get a page and a half of their background, their lore, their religion, their relationships with other groups, and where they generally reside geographically and what that's like. There is a mix of nomadic and sedentary groups in this game, as well as several areas of where they might reside and some cities and places that are melting pots for multiple cultures. There are several important locations and cities that are laid out in this world, with their own interesting backstory. Cassine, for example, is a many-pointed star and has a port that reminds me a lot of ancient Carthage. Sagrada has a lot of cultural and historical similarities to Jerusalem. And Fragrance is your Greco-Roman inspiration. Beyond these cities that I've mentioned and the other large cities, there are several interesting smaller areas that are included in the maps that I think would provide a lot of interesting sandbox opportunities for players. Ruling systems and the ruling elite are mapped out as well. The ruling systems and who these rulers are for each location are mentioned. There are also several religious and cultural clashes that are occurring across the land. A detail isn't spared. The book also goes into gender roles in these different ethnic groups. Even at a glance through, it really was a fabulous read. I could summarize more of the lore and more of the location, but that video would be 2 hours long, and we still have to get to the mechanics of this game. This is a crunchy game. If you aren't familiar with that term, crunchy generally means a lot of mechanics. The rule of thumb generally here is the more specific rule will overrule the general rule. In this game, you and your friends play Dragon Marked, people who are destined for extraordinary adventures. Character creation begins with blood. This is roughly your lineage and your ethnic group. Things are pretty racially diverse in this land, so it's more so about your cultural beliefs. Several locations also play host to many cultural groups who share common practices. Now you choose a path. A path is like a class option, but in this game it is directly tied into your blood. You can choose your path from another blood group. However, this does incur a minor penalty as you are seen as sort of a traitor to your culture. 12. Then you need to distribute 10 points between 3 heroic attributes. Then you get a point in each attribute: strength, constitution, dexterity, intelligence, and charisma. You then get 6 additional points to distribute as you desire. Then you choose an archetype, which will give you some skills that your character is pretty good at. Skills in this game aren't a flat bonus though. Perhaps your character knows a lot about music. Well, to perform music, a skill your character is proficient in, is a charisma roll. But if you wanted to compose a piece, you don't use your charisma score, you use your intelligence score. Then you add a bonus from being proficient in music. As a finishing touch to your character, you then pick a legend for them. This is their backstory and where they've come from. I'm only now just getting to how the game is actually played in session. I said this game was crunchy. Part of this game's crunchiness is it is a dice pool game. If you were, say, to make a roll with a skill, you use your base stat, your attributes, and then any bonuses from your skill to roll a number of d6. If you, say, aren't proficient in a skill, you just roll your base stats. There's also initiative rolls and opposed rolls, but those are pretty basic and easy to understand. Generally, an obstacle or an enemy will have a base challenge level. You then roll your dice to see if you match that level. If you match or go above, you will be successful. So you roll a number of dice, then you add your best numbers with your stats, and that determines whether or not you succeed. So for an example, if an enemy has 5 dice, you will roll 8 and then you will count the best 5. It's fractions, if that makes sense. You also get one special d6 that you mark aside as your dragon die. If you roll a 6 on that die, you are allowed to re-roll the dragon die and add that number to your score, if you so choose. Now every time, if you keep rolling a 6, you just keep rolling the die. There's also a rule that if you roll your pool of dice and 3 dice have the same number, that means your constellation lights up. That leads to really cool stuff, which I won't go into full detail of as it's related to your path, but generally it means you get to be really awesome. There's also an option in this game to hold back some die from trying to succeed in the roll and instead to see how well you swagger. Swagger is basically the cool of the game. This game is so mechanically focused that it's a dice roll to pray. I am kind of running out of time to explain in detail more of the mechanics and what these rolls really look like. If you guys want me to do a video on building a character for this game, or maybe I run a small session and, show you guys snippets of that session so you can see what it's like, let me know. Because I feel like I'm not doing this game justice. I've already said that this is a packed game. Beyond what I've mentioned, there's also a magic system in here that everyone can cast magic, but it has certain requirements. And there's lots of various adventures and places for your characters to experience. Maybe one day this game needs a part 2. This is a really mechanically dense game, but I didn't feel bogged down reading it. I can quite enjoy a crunchy game every now and then, as sometimes having a dice roll that prompts you forward is a lot easier than coming up with it yourself. If you really love fantasy tabletop role-playing games and you're keen for one that isn't just European, I would highly recommend this one. Also, if you're in a group that enjoys just a little bit more of those mechanically dense games, the mechanics in this game, I think, are really enjoyable while there are a lot of them. I paid about $90 for this one, and considering how dense the book is, I definitely think it's going to be one that I'm going to be playing a few times over and over. I hope to see you guys soon at the gaming table. Bye!